Coming up next on Another View, how women around the world turn oppression into opportunity. Half the Sky is a nationwide bestseller and the title of a 2-night documentary event presented by PBS. Half the Sky tells the courageous and inspiring story of women who, despite horrors like sex trafficking, gender-based violence, maternal mortality, and forced prostitution, find solutions through education, healthcare, and economic empowerment. We'll talk with film participant Edna Adan, along with Dr. Jennifer Fish from ODU and Ruth Jones from the YWCA Hampton Roads. Half the Sky, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and welcome to Another View. On October 1st and 2nd at 9 p.m. on our sister station, WHRO TV 15, PBS presents Half the Sky. It's a documentary based on the award-winning bestseller by Nicholas Kristof and Sheryl WuDunn. And in the documentary, the authors are accompanied by 6 celebrity activists as they go to different countries, hearing the courageous and inspiring stories of women overcoming incredible odds and making their lives better. I want to play for you a clip of about Half the Sky so that you can understand what the documentary is about. And you will hear some voices, including authors Nicholas Kristof and Sheryl WuDunn.
When Half the Sky came out, it just hit a chord with so many people in so many different walks of life.
Equal access.
The way that Nick and Sheryl use stories to break through the indifference that still exists when you talk about women and girls is exactly the right way to go about it.
And also, very often, the story is a positive one. It's the girl is an agent for change. The woman has courageously fought back, and now she's organizing her group. These are the stories that really inspire people.
I had a close friend who just said, you have to read this book. This is one of the most important books of our time.
You know, in the past, we could think in terms of our local problems. And one of the things we finally recognized is the big problems that we face cannot be solved unilaterally or in one corner of the globe. It requires working across the entire globe to solve the big issues.
Demographers have shown that there are anywhere between 60 million and 100 million missing females in the current population. In the last half century, more girls were discriminated to death than all the people killed on all the battlefields in the 20th century.
It's a tough topic. The challenge that women and girls face around the world is not an easy topic to talk about, but we really think it is the moral challenge of this century.
We're going to be going on a journey to some of the places in the world where the repression of women and girls is truly at its most extreme. We'll be traveling to 6 different countries, and we've invited 6 American actresses to join us.
Celebrities can bring these issues into the limelight, and I think that's, if you're media connected, that's just a no-brainer. That's your job, you know, to shine a little light on people that are actually doing the hard lifting, but to help them as much as you can.
We're going to meet some people who have so impressed us with the work they're doing to build a better Sierra Leone, a better Cambodia, a better Vietnam, and working on issues like sex trafficking, violence against women, and also solutions such as getting more girls into school and keeping them there.
You need to lift the level of awareness about what women can do so that they're not the victims, that they actually are a part of the solution. This is not rocket science. This is not a problem that is unsolvable, that we have to invent something new. It just takes political will.
It is really about benefiting all of society. When women progress, we all progress. Men and women, boys and girls. No country can get ahead if it leaves half of its people behind.
If you cast your eyes around the world, there is no group that needs to be empowered more than women and girls if we're going to keep the march toward human freedom and progress going. The role and rights of women, their freedom and equality and dignity, is the unfinished business of the 21st century.
So that's what the documentary Half the Sky is all about. Again, it will be on Monday and Tuesday of this coming week at 9 p.m. on WHRO TV 15. But joining me today to talk about the documentary and how we can all work together to end atrocities against women is Dr. Jennifer Fish, head of the Women's Studies Department at Old Dominion University. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Hi, Barbara. I'm well. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for joining me. Ruth Jones, who is the executive director of the YWCA Southampton Roads. Hi, Ruth. How are you?
Good morning. Good afternoon. I am fine also.
Glad to have you here with us. And joining me on the phone is Edna Adan, whose Edna Adan Maternity Hospital is featured in Half the Sky. Edna, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What brings you to the United States?
Well, I was invited by Kristof and Sheryl WuDunn and the Half the Sky team for the launching of the documentary that was done by based on the Half the Sky book. Mm-hmm. So that's what brings me here.
Well, now I've had a chance to have a sneak preview of your story, and I want to start out by telling our audience, if you will, what the Edna Adan Maternity Hospital is all about.
Well, the Edna Adan.
Adan, thank you.
As in Adam and Eve,
okay.
Adan.
Okay.
Not Aden. Aden is a city in Yemen. The hospital is something that an institution I built after I retired from the UN. I'm from a country where there are very limited health facilities, a country that had just come out of a long civil war where whatever had existed before the civil war had been destroyed, where health workers had either fled the country or no longer working, or some of them had died. And when I retired, and with having had a very comfortable life, having had many opportunities that very few other African women have had, the choice was either to go away and settle somewhere else in the world and become yet one more refugee or yet one more person in a diaspora, or just recycle my whole life and just turn everything I owned, everything I had, into cold cash and go home and build a hospital. And that hospital is something that has now acquired a life of its own. It owns me. It's something that if I ever had to do it again, I would do it willingly.
Wow.
People often say, well, how you've been a diplomat, you've been this, you've had those positions, and how can you be happy here and doing what you're doing? And I say, well, today, for the first time, I'm doing what I choose to do. I'm following my heart. I'm making a difference in the lives of people. I'm training health workers, and I only wish I could do it even better and in a much bigger way. And I feel so blessed that I have been guided towards this building of the hospital. So what is the hospital doing? It started off as a maternity hospital. That was my idea, because I'm a nurse, I'm a midwife. That's what I know what to do something about. Mm-hmm. But in our countries, we do not have the luxury of saying, this is a maternity hospital. Down the road is an orthopedic clinic. 2 blocks away, there's an ophthalmic hospital. A hospital to us is a hospital. So when the doors of the hospital were opened, 10 hours later, yes, the first child was born, but then there were also sick men and sick women who were not pregnant who were also brought to the hospital. And you say, well, my goodness, I have the forceps, I have the equipment, I have the staff, I have the facility. I cannot turn my back on someone who is 80 years old and who has, who has a health problem. Somebody who has an asthma attack. I have the oxygen. I cannot turn my back on a diabetic who's in a diabetic coma simply because that person is not pregnant. So the hospital today has a life of its own. It's a general hospital as well as a referral hospital for obstetrical emergencies. But the most important work that we do is to train the next generation of health workers, because far more valuable than whatever I have put in and others have helped me to put in into the construction of the hospital. Far more valuable than that is the knowledge and the skills of the health workers that we have trained and that we continue to train and that we need to train even more. Mm-hmm. That's the real value. That's the lasting gift that I would like to leave for my people. I'm 75. I'm not going to be around for too long. But if I can leave health workers who are trained to perform in a professional way, in an ethical way, who are kind and caring for the patients that they're looking after, then whatever I have put in would have been so much worth it.
My goodness, what a story.
That's the hospital, and I love it.
You know, and one of the things that you also focus on is there was an issue within Somaliland and I guess other areas where women were dying from childbirth. And this was a big concern of yours.
Yes. I'm a midwife, and I'm horrified each time that a woman dies of a cause that no woman in this day and age should die of. Obstetrics, the knowledge of obstetrics has progressed so much. Women get pregnant in your countries, they don't die of eclampsia. They don't die of anemia. They don't die of a ruptured uterus because they did not have access to a cesarean section. But in developing countries, in countries like mine, women are dying of causes that they need not die of. And that is what I would like the world to do something about, not only in my country, Somaliland, but everywhere where medical, obstetrical facilities are inadequate. Mm-hmm. Women are dying because they're poor, they're ignorant, they're anemic, they live in isolated locations, they have never had access to a hospital, they do not understand the importance of prenatal care. No woman in this day and age should go through pregnancy without ever being seen and checked and given prenatal examination and care during her pregnancy. They come to our door. Yeah, they come to our door with situations that could have been prevented or managed so easily 2 or 3, 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, we have a clip from part of the segment that you're in on Half the Sky. Let's take a listen to that.
Last night was a hard night. We had a woman sent to us from Balugubadli, which is a village, a town on the border between Somaliland and Ethiopia, about 4 hours away. She had eclampsia, obstructed labor. She was found to be anemic. Road is rough, unpaved. When she reached us here, she was unconscious. She doesn't have a radial pulse. No blood pressure. We had IVs up, blood given. Unfortunately, she didn't make it, and she died. Okay, out. Go on. This makes it woman number 43 who died in this hospital of causes that elsewhere in the world could have been prevented. No woman in this day and age should die of eclampsia, should die of obstructed labor or anemia. Every single one of her problems had a solution.
And now, how do you protect your own feelings and your emotions as you deal with issues like this on a daily basis?
Oh, well, it's never easy. I'm feeling very emotional now because I see that woman, and she left 5 children behind. Mm. On the clip, you will see that she was brought on a truck. Mm-hmm. She is a woman who is having fits and seizures because of the eclampsia, where she should have, she should not have been transported on a rough road. That's the only road we have. She should have been brought in an ambulance. We didn't have an ambulance. She was brought on the milk truck. That's a woman whose fate was signed when she was poor. She's a nomad. She lives in a place where there are no hospitals, and try as hard as we could, we didn't make her. as I said at that time, we lost 43 women in 8 years, because the hospital now is 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And during those 10 years, we have delivered 14,000 women, and we have lost 53. Now, that in itself, no woman should die of pregnancy-related causes. So even though 53 brings the statistics of maternal mortality in our hospital to 1/4 of the national average, there are still 53 women who died who could have been saved had they had better nutrition, had they had better treatment during pregnancy, had they been referred to us in good time, and had they been transported to us in a far more comfortable way than being brought on a milk truck. So even though they die at my doorstep 2 or 3 minutes, 10 minutes after they are brought to us, it's still very painful. It's emotionally. There's no way. There's no screen you can hide behind. You can either throw in the towel and say, I'm not having this anymore. I'm just going away. I'm going to live somewhere in Europe and turn my back to it. Or you say, well, I'm going to try to do something about it, because throwing in the towel is just not an option in my country. Mm-hmm. And when I think that there are countries that have even a higher maternal mortality rate than Somaliland, it horrifies me. And if Somaliland, a country that is just recovering from civil war, a country that is not politically recognized by the international community, a country where there is very few health workers trained to look after these women, can achieve a reduction of maternal mortality to 1/4 of the national average, then I say everybody can do it. Mm-hmm. They can even do it better elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's to do a wake-up call for the world. Do something about your reproductive health in your individual countries. Train more health workers. Have strategically located facilities where women can be taken to, not over 4 hours drive on a rough road, but where they can be to a health facility closer to where they live. Mm-hmm. The world must unite. We must join hands. We must protect the mothers of these children who are orphaned because their mothers were not given the care and the attention that every human being deserves in this world. When a mother dies, her children also die. Have their chance of survival become compromised.
Mm-hmm. And on top of all of this, there's also a cultural practice that causes issues for women in childbirth also, and that is female circumcision. I know there's a lot of controversy around what it's called. Some people say genital mutilation, some say female circumcision, some say cutting, but I know that that's something else that you work hard in terms of educating women about. Is that right?
Absolutely, because, I'm a Somali. I have gone through it, but then I'm also a midwife. In the old days, I didn't know that this was not a tradition that was required by my religion, Islam. I just assumed that since boys must be circumcised, then girls must also be circumcised. And it was only in 1976, after I had been a practicing midwife for over 16 years, and going to work every morning and trying to get a baby out from a part of the body that was so badly damaged, that I realized and had the information that female circumcision is not an Islamic religious requirement. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my God, these women are going through something which they wrongly believe is a religious requirement. And that's when I started the fight in 1976. Although I would like to blame every maternal death on female circumcision, unfortunately I cannot. Mm-hmm. But then female circumcision is damaging, is causing complications that women should not have in their reproductive lives. It is causing the death of little girls who are dying of infection, who are dying of urinary complications, of pelvic inflammation. Girls are dying of circumstances that compound whatever reproductive health problems or pregnancy-related problems they had. And one of the strategies I use is we have been focusing in the past on educating women. I think from now on we need to educate men. We need to enlist religious leaders to speak out against it. Because if Islam forbids female circumcision, if Islam is against this practice, then it shouldn't be little old ladies like me talking about it. It should be men, knowledgeable men, who are knowledgeable about religion, who should speak to the community and mobilize campaigns against it. I think this is one area that men and women must join hands, because this little girl, whose future is being compromised by this cutting, is the daughter of a father, and that father must have a say in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was passed on to me when I discovered that my father was against my own cutting. So if my father, who was a doctor, a very religious and a very practicing religious person, was against it, then it must be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's one of many problems that women have that needs to be fought, and that needs to be fought with tact and with sensitivity. Must be addressed by the people of that community. Must not be it must not be finger pointing, because there are so many cultural and traditional practices that we are very proud of. We have cultures that are rich and that we need to preserve and we need to respect. But we do have this practice which is harmful to health and which is not required by Islam, that we need to fight.
We held a community screening last night for Half the Sky, and we watched the segment on gender-based violence. And Jennifer, I want to bring you in on the conversation as we talked about people from other countries who care and who want to go into these developing countries and help, and how sometimes it's really necessary to have someone from the inside be able to start that conversation of changing tradition and habits such as cutting, as Edna was discussing. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Of course. Thank you for that moment. Ms. Adan, thank you for this powerful story. I want to use this in my teaching and allow your story to educate our students. We discussed the role of outside organizations, international non-governmental organizations, and the right of those who have access to resources and privileges to go into other countries and impose some form of change. And I think what the stories in Half the Sky and what we hear today echo so clearly is the way in which structures and systems need to be changed. So when we look at the oppression of women around the world, regardless of context, we're thinking about issues of domestic violence as they're connected to poverty, issues of unemployment, nutrition, healthcare systems, access to systems, education. And so ideally, as outsiders, we're going in to support that kind of structural change. And then in my own experience over the course of the last 15 years, working predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa, it's always the organizations that have leaders from within who can sustain that. We work with an organization called Tostan in Senegal, and they've had a woman there for 20 years from the U.S., and she works in communities in a way in which she's never seen. She empowers community leaders to go into communities and change gender-based violence from the perspective of human rights. But it's working completely with local community leaders.
And your midwives that you train at the hospital, that's part of their role also in terms of educating women back in the other villages and so forth about reproductive rights, about their health and so forth.
Oh yes. I mean, it's the training of a midwife is not only limited to getting a baby out from a mother. It's all the education that goes around it. It's the health and the hygiene and the welfare of that woman. It's the community support for that woman, and it's the avoiding of harmful practices. And one of the things that women, the graduate nurses midwives have to advise the community about is about the importance of breastfeeding and the value of breast milk, the value of attending a prenatal clinic, the value of vaccinating and immunizing children against childhood diseases, the importance of hygiene, the importance of, the right kind of food to eat, and so on. So during their exam, during their training, these girls must show the confidence, are trained to counsel, to advise, and to give health education to the clients that they serve. And very often we have the role play, and I take the role of an old woman who wants to do this or that, the traditional thing to her, and she's got to convince me not to do it. So it gives them confidence. We put across to them the usual arguments that the community has or presents. This is their job, and if they cannot do that, and if they do not have the skills as well as the confidence to serve that community, then they have chosen the wrong profession. They should go and become, I don't know, learn how to sew and lock themselves up somewhere and just sew little dresses, not communicate to people. They must be good communicators, and they must be convincing, and they must portray an image of being sincere, of being respectful, of being of wanting to change things for the better.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the PBS documentary Half the Sky, which airs on WHRO TV 15 on Monday and Tuesday, October 1st and 2nd. My guests are Edna Adan, who is featured in the documentary, Ruth Jones, Executive Director of the YWCA Hampton Roads, and Dr. Jennifer Fish with the Women's Studies Department at Old Dominion University. Ruth, I'm going to bring you into the conversation also because as Edna talks about training and teaching these midwives who go out and become community health educators, if you will, pretty much in a sense that's what you do at the YW in terms of educating women and men about female issues and about particularly violence against women.
Absolutely. We have a couple of staff members in particular who are charged with the responsibility of implementing outreach and education programs targeting college and university students as well as individuals in the community. We work with allied professionals to help them understand the signs of abuse so that they can intervene appropriately. And through the outreach and education, we generally reach over 2,000 individuals each year. So we're very proud of the work we do in the community targeting that specific thing.
Mm-hmm. And then I want to ask you a question because have you seen the full 4 hours of the documentary yet?
Myself? No, yes. I have not.
Okay.
It was sent to me, but I don't have a laptop, so I couldn't watch it.
Okay, because one of the things that strikes me about the documentary is that we point out issues, and Jennifer, I'm going to toss this question to you, but we point out issues that are happening in Somaliland, in Sierra Leone, in Cambodia, in every place except the United States. But these are issues that also affect women here in the United States, right?
Absolutely, Barbara, and I appreciate you bringing that up. You know, I work in Africa, throughout the continent, and often my students who go with me leave with a feeling of motivation to do something, to change the world. And so they'll ask activists in Rwanda or in Senegal and South Africa, well, what can I do? And I am always marveling at the way they say, you know, the best thing you can do is change your own country. Work with women in your own country. Some of the students won't go to the places that are in this film, and some will take that on. Mm-hmm. But it's important to think about that interconnection. We know in this country, 25% of women will experience some form of gender-based violence in their lifetime. College women are at the greatest risk factor there. And the United States is certainly not free of forms of gender-based oppression. And so it's important when we see this film to not place all of these forms of injustice in the so-called developing world.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Ruth, when we talk about counseling and when we talk about women who are facing homelessness, domestic violence, and so forth, a lot of times people say, well, if I had only known, I could have X, I could have done something or whatever. What are some of the things that we as individuals can do to pay attention so that if someone is reaching out without calling out, that there are signs there? What are some of those?
There are a number of things that individuals can do to respond. First and foremost, just be aware of what's happening with women who are in relationships with individuals or men who are overbearing, men who in some cases require women to check in and always report where they are. If a woman is in a relationship where she feels like she's constantly being threatened threatened or intimidating, or her spouse, partner, or significant other is using children to actually I guess in some ways control the situation. Those would be things that folks can pay attention to. When you think about women who are on college campuses or universities, those women who are attending parties where heavy drinking is taking place, that's something really to pay close attention to, because one drink too many can be an opportunity for someone to use a drug or some other form of substance to influence the situation. So those are a couple of things that folks should pay attention to and be aware of in their own surroundings.
So I'm aware, I see something that's going on. What do I do?
Well, you can actually speak with the individual if they're open to having a conversation about what is happening in their own space. Through the YWCA, we offer a helpline so that folks can find out about signs of abuse, can find out information about resources available in the community to help them. One of the first things is to just do something, and Jennifer alluded to that already, as opposed to just sitting back and wondering or even saying that's a private matter or a private affair. So do something.
So get out there and do something. Do you have that helpline number with you by any chance?
I do. The hotline number for our domestic violence program is 757-625-5570. We also have a hotline for individuals who are impacted by sexual abuse, sexual assault, or rape, That number is 757-622-4300.
Okay. Edna, how do you change culture? How do you change the whole idea of the notion that it is okay to hurt women?
No, I think one needs to use very strong arguments. Like, would you like someone to punch you on the nose? Would you like someone to give you a black eye just because somebody felt like it? A woman, is someone just because she is physically smaller than you and less physically strong than you are, does not give you the right to break her nose, to punch her on the face. So you shame that person. You say only a coward would hit a woman. The brave do not. But these are some of the arguments we use, and we say, well, if you think that she's alone, she is not strong enough to protect herself against you, then you should know that she has us on her side as well. So we together are much stronger than you are alone. So don't go on hitting this woman, because every time you hit that woman, you're hitting me as well. And you don't want to have me in the ring with you, because I can beat you anytime. Not physically, but I can legally, and I can, in many ways. So these are the arguments we use.
One of the things that came up in the discussion. One of the things that came up in the discussion last evening was that a lot of countries have laws in place to prevent gender-based violence, but the enforcement is the issue, that people are reluctant to enforce it. Has that been your experience in Somaliland?
Well, it is. When you have limited resources like my country has, and you have limited law enforcement facilities, you don't want to put, for instance, in the instance of female cutting. Do I put every grandmother in prison? Do I put every mother in prison? Do I have the facilities to hold every grandmother, every mother in prison? I mean, having a legislation to criminalize it would be an insult to the legislation, because we will not be able to enforce that. So we need to find other ways to convince people not to do it, and then only have the criminal law act. We do have criminal, we do have police, and we do have criminal law. If somebody then, she goes and she makes a complaint, then there will be a criminal offense. So, but very often these women refuse to go and take their rapist or the person who has punched them on the face, if it's a husband or a close relative, to court, because Well, I'll give you an example of a woman, which we tried every way to help. A woman who had a fistula. A fistula is an obstetrical fistula, something that happens after childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
The husband wanted to divorce her, and he said, because you're leaking, because you've got these, things, you these things that happen, you can no longer be my wife, and I am taking my child. And she tried to hold on to her child, and he hit her with a knife. He stabbed her. This woman was brought to us. She had to have, of course, the stab wounds treated, and then, of course, also had the fistula repaired. She had bled so much before she came to us. She was very weak. She was very anemic. So I kept her for a while in the hospital, and then after she was healed, I gave her a job in the kitchen to peel the potatoes or whatever, so she would earn a little bit of money to allow her to go home. Mm-hmm. Now, when she was ready to go home, I said, look, I'm here for you. You've had something done to you that should not have happened to you. Somebody put a knife in your body, and someone who was your child's father did this to you. I am willing to support you through any court. I'll spend the rest of my life defending your case. Do you want to, lodge a complaint? She refused.
She refused to do it. Too much pressure from home, too much pressure from her local surrounding?
Well, she said, I'm not going to do this to the father of my child. And that was it.
And that was the end of it. Jennifer, how do we... Again, we have laws. There are laws there's legislation, but we have to change not only men's minds, but women's minds in terms of how women should be treated.
Right. And we know we have progressive legislation in many countries, and yet, as we heard in the film last night, 102 countries still do not have legislation to protect against domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And so we also hear Sheryl WuDunn saying this just takes political will. And I would say it takes political will and political institutions and enforcement mechanisms. Mm-hmm. One of the most important examples I've seen in my work is in South Africa, where an organization called Somaliland is a direct response unit that deals with the sexual crisis in South Africa, which has the highest rate of rape in the world right now, unfortunately, even though it's democratic, even though it's gone through this incredible human rights transition. And there, the Somaliland organization is a one-stop shop, so it serves women, and it's based at a local hospital, but it has also trained elementary school children in some of the signs that Ruth just spoke about. It also works with legal advocacy so that women can be protected in the court system, and it has a separate sexual violence police unit, and these all work in harmony so that these mechanisms, the laws that are on paper that some say are laws without teeth, can be enforced. And that's been quite progressive and quite effective in South Africa. I hope we can model that here.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call if you'd like to join the conversation on Half the Sky. Carl joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Carl. You're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call, Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. I've lived abroad for many years, and I find females, that whole process, a generational thing. It's inbred in the culture, and many countries accept the rule because it's almost required to be part of the UN, to be part of the world environment. Yet culturally, and in some instances religiously, it is all but mandated. How do you overcome that? You're talking about changing a culture completely.
Okay, let's get a response from Edna. Edna, were you able to hear the question?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah. Well, you change a day at a time. You change a little bit at a time. Well, one of the things that I concentrate on, there's so many things around a particular cultural practice that you focus on one thing that your argument is strong in. And I focus on the aspect of health. Mm-hmm. This is something that everybody can understand. I limit myself to that because that is really what concerns me every day on a daily basis. The other aspects, the economic, the sexuality and things like that, I don't have the energy to deal with that. But the health is something I focus on. So So when I talk about bleeding, they know. Don't cut, therefore she will not bleed. Don't take her flesh away, therefore she will not become infected. Don't damage the normal God-created anatomy of the woman through which a baby is going to be born, because it is going to affect her when she is going to have a child and she grows up. So these are arguments that you try to convince. But we're not getting much progress unless we join hands with men and religious leaders. So you do the best you can, but legislation is definitely not the answer. It has not been the answer. It's been, legislation has been in place in many countries, but it hasn't changed. It's the attitude of the people that must change.
Do you ever get frustrated, Edna?
No, I would be wasting useful energy. I get angry about things. I say, "Oh, come on, let's go back to the board. Let's see how can we go about this? Let's think about it some more." But yes, there is, of course. I mean, there is no magic wand that takes care of all the problems that one has. A hospital has problems. Every hospital in the world has problems. A hospital in a poor country has problems. A hospital with limited resources has problems. A hospital that is being set up in a place where there's never been a hospital before has problems. So we're not getting where I would like us to be, but we're making small steps and we're getting there. And if we join hands, we will overcome more of the problems that face us.
I love that optimism.
Getting frustrated and throwing the towel in is certainly not an option.
Yeah. Can you tell?
If I do that, I would have wasted my whole life.
Can you tell us about the Friends of Edna Adan?
Yes, the Friends of Edna Adan Hospital are a group of a group of people, not so young actually, people who have joined together and formed a non-profit organization registered as Friends of the Edna Hospital, and they have been raising funds for us because while I'm alive, I have a UN pension, therefore I can cover the shortfalls of the hospital. But when I'll be gone, my pension will stop. So they raise funds for some of the running costs of the hospital, to cover some of the salaries of the teachers of the hospital, and also to set up an endowment fund for the day I will no longer be here. It was set up in Minnesota, but they're scattered all over the states. And they're people I'm very, very grateful to, because they have supported me through the very, very thick very difficult years of finishing the hospital, because my resources ran out when the shell of the hospital was built, but we had no doors, we had no windows, we had no tiles. And people from Somaliland, business people, joined hands and then gave me the biggest support, gave me construction equipment and construction material, and the Friends of the Edna Hospital raised funds so we could buy windows and doors and tiles for the hospital.
Wow.
So if you look at our website, www.ednahospital.org, there'll be details there. And of course, my aim now is to raise funds for midwifery training. We are just starting on the hospital being the main teaching hospital for nurses and midwives in Somaliland and in the Horn of Africa. We're now raising our training to the level of the Bachelor of Science degree for midwives and nurses, and we just graduated our very, very first 21 midwives who obtained their Bachelor of Science degree in midwifery. So it's taken me a lifetime to get to graduating those 21. And we want to expand
fantastic.
that.
Congratulations. That is just wonderful. And I know everyone will see your story. I believe yours is the second part on Tuesday evening, but we so appreciate your spending time with us here on Another View today. We wish you the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. That's Edna Adan, and she is the founder and the midwife and the force of nature in Somaliland, and her story is a part of Half the Sky. We've only got a couple minutes left, Jennifer and Ruth, and I want to ask you, Ruth, to please give out the numbers again for domestic violence and for sexual assault.
Sure. Our domestic violence hotline number is 757-625-5570. Our sexual assault hotline number is 757-622-4300.
And if you could give a piece of advice to a woman in 30 seconds or less, what would that advice be in terms of avoiding gender-based violence?
Remember at all times that we have value.
Okay. Thank you. That's Ruth Jones, the Executive Director of the YWCA South Hampton Roads. And in full disclosure, I am the board chair of the YWCA. So want to let the audience know that so we have no conflict there. Jennifer, we got about a minute left. A piece of advice that you'd like to give to women about getting involved so that all of us can be protected.
Right. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Barbara. In fact, I offer this advice to my students almost weekly when they say, what can I do? Especially after having gone to the developing world. We offer programs in sub-Saharan Africa every year. And so when students come back and our community members ask what they can do, we often say, well, begin at home, begin with education. I work in Senegal, and there they begin with reading to children and teaching value systems in ways that are aligned with human rights. And then, of course, we have wonderful organizations here. Get involved here. As we do, we see the connection between. And then, of course, if anyone wants to go abroad, we have those opportunities as well through the Women's Studies Department.
Okay. Jennifer Fish with Old Dominion University, Ruth Jones with the YWCA. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. Starting this weekend, you can step back in time and see history through the eyes of more than 36 Black artists at the Muscarelli Museum of Art in Williamsburg. The exhibit is titled African American Art, Harlem Renaissance, Civil Rights Era, and Beyond. And it comes to the Muscarelli on loan from the Smithsonian. As our Lisa Godley explains, this engaging look at the African American experience is beautifully told through the paintings, sculptures, prints, and photographs on display.
Three upstairs galleries at the Muscarelli Museum of Art are dedicated to the vibrant artwork that depicts the struggles and triumphs of a life in rural and urban America. Megan Bryant, curatorial fellow at the museum, was our exhibition guide.
And what's exciting about this exhibition is that many of the works are actually being exhibited by the Smithsonian for the very first time.
What makes this exhibit so fascinating are the many different styles and textures of art. You'll find paintings and sculptures of various styles. In fact, over half of the exhibition is made up of photographs.
One of the photographers in particular, James Vandersee, was a prominent photographer and was really a key figure in the Harlem Renaissance. I think people will be excited to see. Gordon Park's image of Muhammad Ali jumping rope from 1966 will be of particular interest to people because it's a sort of perspective of someone very famous, but it's not necessarily what you would expect. We see Ali jumping rope, but we don't see him face on. We actually are looking at his back, and you really only see his face as it's reflected in a mirror as he's exercising.
The display includes about 100 works from 43 African American artists, each creation telling a story. One example is artist William H. Johnson's painting titled Sewing. The piece dates back to the 1940s. Johnson uses vibrant oil paintings on canvas to speak to the dignity and resilience of those who worked the land.
It's a scene of a man and woman performing agricultural labor. But what's great about this painting is that it's an image of labor, but it's an image of strength. And you can see in the subject's form that they are in control of what they're doing.
Many of the cultural, political, and social movements of the 20th century were rooted in the Black community. The climate of the community comes to life in Buford Delaney's 1946 work, Can Fire in the Park.
Delaney uses a wide array of colors to intricately and sort of abstractedly show us, a vision of people experiencing that sort of community on a cold night and working together to stay warm and maintain some sort of sense of community. And what's also interesting about that work is that rather than seeing the subjects' faces, which we see a lot of in this exhibition, Delaney shows us not so much their faces, but shows us instead the actual experience of being part of this group of people that are hanging together.
Renee Stout's three-dimensional piece that she created between 1991 and 1994 is called The Colonel's Cabinet.
And this is just a fantastic work. It's about 5.5 feet by 4 feet, so it's quite large, and it incorporates a variety of media. There's a carpet, there's a chair, there's a small painting, and it's basically a cabinet that's filled with found and handmade objects. And the work is really a complex arrangement of curiosities that were collected by this imagined character that Stout created.
A walk through this wonderfully expressive exhibit that captures so many aspects of history should take you about an hour. The Muscarelli Museum of Art is located on Jamestown Road on the campus of the College of William and Mary and is open every day but Monday. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And the exhibit starts today and runs through January 6, 2013. Time now for things to view and do in Hampton Roads.
You will be my Saturday love.
The York James City County branch of the NAACP is hosting a voter empowerment summit tomorrow, Saturday, September 29th, from 10 until noon at New Zion Baptist Church, Long Hill Road in Williamsburg. Call 757-229-3113 for more information. The Digital Bookmobile is in Virginia Beach today until 4, and tomorrow, September 29th, from 10 until 4 at the Myra Obendorf Central Library on Virginia Beach Boulevard. Find out how to access free ebooks, audiobooks, and other digital content from your favorite library. Call the Virginia Beach Central Library to find out more. The NSU Women's Economic Development Center presents Entrepreneurship for Women, a free 8-week series on how to start a business. It starts on Monday, October 1st from 10 until noon on the campus of NSU. Call 823-2650 for details. October is Domestic Violence Month, and you're invited to attend the Day of Unity Night of Remembrance Candlelight Vigil on Monday, October 1st from 6:30 until 8 p.m. at Town Center Fountain in Virginia Beach. Yours truly will serve as MC, and you're asked to wear purple to raise awareness of domestic violence. And finally, if acting is your thing, then consider the TerraVision Total Theater Experience Acting Workshop beginning Wednesday, October 3rd from 6 until 9 at the Addicts Theater, Church Street in Norfolk. Call 839-7963 to register. These and other events are on our website, anotherviewradio.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming programs. And if you missed part of today's show or you want to hear some past shows, go to anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. Or you can go to WHRV.org, click on Listen, then click on Podcasts, and we'll be there. It won't cost you a thing. Next week, parenting tips to ensure that your child has a successful school year. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Crystal Romney, who answered the phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.